Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever it is that you are, wherever you may be. Thank you very much for making us a part of your day. I am Brad Franklin, Digital Media Relations Manager here in Chesterfield. Very glad to tell you that Chesterfield Behind the Mic is on the air once again. I get to do a lot of fun podcasts from time to time. I get to meet new people. I get to finally get a chance to sit down with folks that I've known for a while, that I've worked with, but never had on the podcast, and that is very much the case today. I'm very glad to welcome Kelly Freed, who is the Director of the Community Services Board here in Chesterfield. Kelly, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Very glad to have you. Very glad to get one of my objectives with this podcast is to try to get every director, every department represented here. Now, certainly we've had folks from mental health before, which is kind of under the larger umbrella that is CSB, which we'll get to in a minute. But I'm very glad to have you on the show for the first time, and certainly to talk about the wide array of services that are offered by folks in your shop. Before we get started, I always try to begin each episode with a little bit of a meet and greet, so to speak, a little bit about the guest, and give folks a chance to hear a little bit more about who they're hearing from, right? So they can get a sense of the context there. So what's your background, Kelly, and how did you get into this line of work?
Sure. So my undergraduate degree is from VCU and is in health information management. My master's degree is from VCU as well, and that's in health administration. So my entire career has been in some type of healthcare leadership. I started my career at Chippenham Medical Center there as the assistant director of health information. Mm-hmm. And after a number of years there, I didn't have a family at the time, and then I ended up having my first child, and there's a lot when you work for a hospital,
right,
it's,
sure.
It's weekend responsibilities, holidays, so forth. And so I wanted a little more work-life balance in that situation. Right. And so I said, well, at the time, if you wanted to, look for other opportunities, it was a newspaper. There wasn't the internet or anything like it is today. And so,
as a former newspaper person, I appreciate that.
Exactly. So I ended up seeing an ad about the Chesterfield Community Services Board. Had no idea.
Right.
That this line of healthcare existed really to the degree that it does. And so took that opportunity, was fortunate enough to get the position here at the CSB. And of course, it was a different position at that time. But so glad that I did, because it opened my eyes to another whole world of this behavioral healthcare, has enabled me to be able to help those in my family and friends and the community as well. Yeah.
I can imagine too, over the years and doing this kind of work, that having those being able to see that impact, it bolsters you even more, I can imagine, because it is a significant amount of work. And certainly there are so many different services, which we're going to get into here in a few. Obviously the work that's done by you and folks in your shop, folks in your colleagues here, it's incredibly important work. And one of the things that I'm always really struck by as I talk to various parts of the county operation is all of the things that are just mission critical. And you think about the people who need various services, whether that's, utilities, for example, and we come to count on these things. And they're folks that are doing the work like you guys are doing, that, folks need those services desperately. Before we drill into all of the things that CSB does, can you tell me a little bit about sort of your role in the sort of bigger picture of what CSB is and how it all operates?
Definitely. The CSB in general, a lot of people don't know, what does that really mean? And really that's our legal name, Community Services Board. It's the Code of Virginia, established community services boards as the first point of entry into the public mental health system. Right. Years ago, we were having a challenge of people really knowing who we were, because if they called the Community Services Board, they might think it's community service, or they might be some other general service functions. And so we knew that we needed to change our name. Right. And so at that time, we changed it to Mental Health Support Services. Mm-hmm. That still does not accurately define us, and I know we'll get in a little bit later about the different services. Mm-hmm. But we are an entity of Chesterfield County. We do have our own standalone board. Mm-hmm. So when you're a community services board, you could be an operating board, which means you're kind of self-sufficient, and or there could be administrative policy boards where you're a entity of a county government, and that's kind of how we're defined. So even though we are a department of Chesterfield County, we do have our own standalone governing board. It's a 15-member board that is appointed by the Board of Supervisors. So there is additional oversight. And then, of course, we also are funded by the Department of Behavioral Health. So that's another whole, oversight entity that we have because all of our services are licensed by the department. My role when I look at what does it mean to be the director of the department, first of all, I have a big responsibility to ensure that we are providing the best programs and services to the community and our residents here in Chesterfield. That means, hiring quality staff, ensuring that the staff are trained, making sure the programs have the resources that they need to be able to serve everybody well. At the same time, though, I have had other positions within the department since I've been here. I've been the director for about the past 6 years. When you're a director of a specific program, you're more laser focused on that particular service line. But as the director, I really have to have, a view of all the different programs and services. How are they fitting together? Where can we better serve our residents? And then looking down the road, what's coming 5, 10 years down the road as way, are our service delivery models changing? Are our funding streams changing? And so, it's a great place to be because I can see a little bit of everything, but it's also a challenge in making sure that, we're going in the right direction and we're prepared to meet the next challenge.
And too, when you mentioned you've got the board of supervisors, you've got the CSB board, and you've got, so there's a lot of different irons in that fire. I can understand it's quite the challenge. Now, in terms of what the CSB is and how it sort of ties to the county, let's talk a little bit about sort of how you would describe the CSB itself and also its direct ties to the county. How does all of this work?
So we do, obviously, our budget, we have a budget just like all the rest of the departments. Our budget is approved first by our governing board that I was talking about a few minutes ago, and then by the Chesterfield County Board of Supervisors. We follow all the policies and procedures that the county, requires all county departments to follow. So in that line, we're very much the same as other county departments. It's just we also have so many additional funding streams and responsibilities. We are heavily regulated by the state. We have audits all the time outside of any, internal audit functions. And so, again, a huge responsibility because we are the behavioral health system for Chesterfield. And, I know we're still going to get to the programs and services, but that's sort of the relationship.
Behavioral health in general, I can imagine, is such a, kind of catch-all. When you think about all of the things that you guys do and all of the ways that those things sometimes fit together and then sometimes overlap and then sometimes don't, I can imagine it's extremely daunting when you try to explain what it even is because it is such a huge umbrella. I was thinking maybe it would be good to give, maybe this is a good place for folks to get a sense of scale, a sense of scope. Can you help us understand the sort of size, maybe the size and scope of those receiving services? Maybe give us some context in terms of the way your budget sort of splits up.
Sure. So a fun fact that I like to share is that a lot of folks don't know we're the third largest county department behind fire and police.
Oh, that's interesting.
Now, that's in numbers of employees. So we have about 600 employees for our department. Our budget this particular year is $59 million. So a lot of folks don't realize the amount of funding that does go into our behavioral health, mental health services. Our budget for FY26 is going to increase to $62 million. So pretty large there. We serve about 8,000 county residents a year, kind of split between those that receive mental health services versus substance use services versus intellectual disabilities. And then let me think of some of the other pieces and parts, but that kind of gives you the scope right there.
Is the 62, is that all revenue streams together, or is that just the county
That's
portion?
all revenue streams together. The county funds us about $16 million. The majority of our revenue is Medicaid funded.
And that's why I wanted to mention it, because I think it's good for folks who are listening who maybe don't sort of understand the way that sausage is made, that there are so many other, like you said, and it's not just that there are other sources. They are the lion's share of those sources.
Yes, I think the best way to explain it, we are really a healthcare organization. And so we bill insurances, But one thing I want to point out is we don't turn anybody away for their inability to pay. We are the safety net for the county. So if somebody cannot afford behavioral health services somewhere else, they will be served here, or
now,
can be.
As we record this today, it's technically still April. When people are hearing this, it's going to be May, which is Mental Health Month. And I want to start there, talk a little bit about sort of the services that CSB provides. We'll start with mental health. How would you describe that portion of what you guys do?
I would say that we serve, children and adults. A lot of folks, when they think of mental health, they just think of the counseling piece. And so we, definitely provide the short-term counseling if anybody has needs, whether it's anxiety, depression, things like that.
Right.
We certainly provide those outpatient services. And then there's always a subset of individuals that it's more longer-term needs. So serious mental illness or maybe serious emotional disturbances with children. We have specialized services for those populations because a lot of times individuals need services throughout their life.
Right.
They can recover. They're very successful. They can have jobs, housing, so forth. But it does, often they need a lot of wraparound services. And so we do have some longer term psychosocial day programs where individuals can come for the day and really interact with others to gain more social interaction and also to learn job skills and other activities of daily living. And then we have permanent supportive housing programs, so we can assist individuals that are on the verge of homelessness with having, stable housing. And we have employment services on the mental health side. So those are more the longer term services. But the traditional mental health services, outpatient counseling, we provide that as well. And then I always like to mention our prevention pieces. The key is to really give residents the tools before things become an issue, or to really be able to just, educate them on ways that they can help others. And so our prevention team is in the schools. They do classes on, anti-bullying. They do classes on signs of suicide. They do parent classes in the evening, to help, parents with different aspects with their children. Right. They also are out doing, cannabis prevention. Working with CBD shops and trying to provide educational materials there. Right. Always we're providing information on locking up medications. Yeah. I think you've heard of the don't be an accidental drug dealer. And it's because a lot of individuals can get medications right out of their families, closets versus, somewhere else on the street. So just a lot of education and things from a prevention standpoint.
As a quick follow-up, how would you say in the last, I don't know how you wanted to cut this up, whether it's the last few years, the last several years, that things have changed? Because it certainly feels like we are much more mindful of mental health now in a way we simply just weren't as a society in general, but certainly going, it feels like certainly since the pandemic, it feels that way, right? We talk about it at least much more. How have things changed in your career in terms of the people that are requiring those services and how prevalent they are?
I think the biggest thing is social media has played a big role in being able to get the word out. I know during the pandemic, we were running some type of social media statement every single day and trying to help, individuals as they were being isolated and just talking about all different topics. But I think that is the key, is just there's more information that we can get in everybody's hands than we were able to do years ago. Right.
Now, in addition to obviously the mental health support services, which, as you said, it's not necessarily a misnomer, but it doesn't really do as great a job because you just can't, right? Like there's just so much there. But that's what's crazy about CSB is that there's so much more beyond just that. Obviously, you're talking substance use disorders, you're talking about intellectual, developmental disabilities, to other services for children. What can you tell me about sort of all of those kind of prongs, if you will, of what CSB does?
We serve individuals from birth all the way through, their lifespan. And so when I talk about birth, we have an infant and toddler program. It's called Infant and Toddler Connection. And so a lot of times there's babies that are born, 20 weeks now or even earlier. And in the past, the babies would not necessarily survive. Now, they do because of the increases in technology. But often they're not at the developmental milestones as maybe their peers. And so, a lot of individuals may not realize, but we provide physical therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy. All of those services are within our infant program. A lot of time the referrals come directly from the hospitals, but they don't have to. And that really, are services that really help children catch up to those developmental milestones. And we'll serve children in the infant program till about the age 3. And then you really have an idea whether they need more longer-term services in our developmental disabilities programs.
Right.
You spoke about the different, I divide us up into 3 different categories. So we have the mental health, substance use, and developmental disabilities. So I'll speak first to the developmental disabilities. So, we know individuals that have Down syndrome or some other developmental disabilities. We have a wide array of services.
Right.
We have case management services, which is really just ensuring that we are linking individuals to all the other wraparound services that they need.
Right.
And then we also have residential services. We have group homes in the county that we operate 24 hours a day.
Right.
We have employment services. We have, just day program services. So that's all in that particular area. And then for substance use, we all know that the substance use epidemic, it used to be called the opioid epidemic, but there's so many other substances now. We have the outpatient counseling. We provide medication-assisted treatment. We just have a full array of services in that area as well. But if I could sum it all up, I think what I would say is that years ago, if we look over the last, I've been there almost 30 years now. So over the last 25 years, it used to be if you needed services, you came here to our main building, and we would serve you in that way, with the exception of a few community services that we have. Then we started moving to how do we integrate with the other county departments. So we have staff that are located in juvenile detention. We have staff that are in community corrections. We have staff that have been in the jails. We're, ensuring that when individuals come for services, they can receive the majority of their services in one place. And then over the last 5 years, what we're really doing is seeing a transition where we're out in the community. So we are going to where individuals are. And so we have a mobile integrated healthcare team that's going out following up on individuals post overdose. We have a lot of peer providers that are out in the community trying to educate, going into neighborhoods and so forth to educate as well. And then we have our crisis providers that are out in the community as well. So it's really, how can we go and meet people where they are versus you come to us?
Yeah. And that kind of speaks to the question I asked a minute ago, like how have things changed?
That's a big change.
That's a huge change, I can imagine. In terms of sort of the bigger picture as we sort of wrap up, I'm just curious. Sometimes I do this with episodes where I try to give people a chance to sort of leave some sort of closing thoughts or something. I thought I might give that opportunity to you too, because I'm just curious, what do you want people to know about the CSB? Not just this month for Mental Health Month, but basically all year long. What would you want people to know about what you guys do, and maybe even how they could, figure out services that they or folks that they love might need?
I think the biggest thing is we are here 24/7. So, we want to meet people where they are. So at any point in time, if somebody's concerned, they feel like they just need to talk to somebody, we have same-day access. You do not have to call for an appointment. You can just walk right into our front doors Monday through Friday, and there will be somebody that will be able to do, talk with you and do an assessment if needed. And so we're always available. And if you're not aware of where we are, it's 6801 Lucy Corps Boulevard. We're right across the street from the Lucy Corps Nursing Home and right on the county complex. That's our main location for intakes. Also, if there's an emergency, or if you're just concerned and you really want to talk to somebody, call 988. That is the National Behavioral Health Hotline, but you're not going to get somebody elsewhere in the country. You're going to get a caller right here that's connected to Chesterfield. And so when they answer that call, if it's not something they can just talk somebody through, they're going to link you to our services. And if it's an emergency, somebody is going to go out and assist at that time. So, we're here every day. And if you want more information, I know this is just a quick blurb, but we are on the internet, with Chesterfield.gov and its mental health support services. But, just give us a call because we definitely, have brochures and things that we can help.
Good deal. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for giving us some time. I know you are very busy these days, and I very much appreciate you taking some time to talk to us about all the various things the CSB does. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Make sure you check us out on social media. On Twitter, it's at Chesterfield VA, and on Instagram, it's Chesterfield Virginia, all one word. And on Facebook, you can check out our podcast page. Just search Chesterfield Behind the Mic. Now, make sure to follow or subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Overcast, or wherever it is that your programs are sold. And if you're so inclined to give us a rating and review, we greatly appreciate it. As always, a video version of our show is available on our YouTube channel as well as on our website at Chesterfield.gov/podcast. That's also where you can submit some feedback anytime, make a suggestion, or just reach out to us. You can watch the show on WCCT Thursday through Sunday at 7, and on the weekends at noon. That is Comcast Channel 98, Verizon Channel 28. Lastly, check out Chesterfield.gov/connect with us to find out a number of other ways to connect to Chesterfield County. My thanks to my director, Martin Stith, my executive producer, Teresa, Bonifas, and all the good folks from Constituent Media Services for all they do. And my thanks to you for joining us today. So, from all of us here in Chesterfield, thanks again for making us a part of your day. We'll see you again real soon. Take good care. From blogs to podcasts. And I'm very glad to tell you that Chesterfield Behind the Mic is on the air once again. Weekly video segments and newsletters, social media, the latest community news.
And this is your Chesterfield News Minute for September 19th.
How to get in touch, and everything in between. If you want to know about Chesterfield County, our Connect With Us webpage has you covered. Chesterfield.gov/connect with us. Connect with us, your source for all things Chesterfield.